Hello, I'm Dan Rather, and welcome to the CBS Evening News Online Edition. Just ahead, the situation in Iraq. Is it or is it not worse than the American people have been told? Also, a look at what went wrong in the test of a private spacecraft. And a report on how advertisers are using medical science now to see inside consumers' heads. It's all starting now on the CBS Evening News Online Edition. In about 24 hours, the two major candidates for president will face off in a debate that will focus largely on an issue that could decide the election, the war in Iraq, how it's going, where it's going. President Bush insists it's going in the right direction. Senator John Kerry says it's not. What's indisputable is that the U.S. death toll is rising along with the Iraqi insurgency. But as CBS's David Martin reports tonight, Bush administration officials insist they have a plan to put the insurgency down.
U.S. officials concede they are not defeating or even containing an insurgency which goes deeper than the daily attacks and kidnappings seen on television. The governor of Al-Anbar province has warned the U.S. that threats against local officials and their families have brought his government to the verge of collapse. And it goes wider than the so-called Sunni triangle around Baghdad. A recent report prepared for the State Department by a private security firm says a general trend is emerging of attacks spreading into historically less active areas. Scott Taylor, a Canadian journalist who survived 5 days as a hostage around the northern city of Mosul, says the area is honeycombed with mujahideen willing to die.
I think that Mosul is probably about to explode in terms of the resistance, which has been fairly, dormant up until now in that particular area.
If the insurgency continues to get worse, officials say that could undermine public support for the war. But they insist they have a plan to take control of most of the country in time for nationwide elections in January.
Iraqi Prime Minister Alawi and U.S. commanders have agreed on a military campaign plan to rout the insurgents out of 16 cities, sending American troops in first, followed by Iraqi forces. The campaign would begin with small cities and work up to major rebel strongholds such as Fallujah, depending on how well Iraqi forces perform. That's the plan, and the Iraqi defense minister was quoted today as saying the campaign will begin next month. No one is willing to predict success, and so much depends on untested Iraqi troops. But everyone agrees the next 3 months could be decisive. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
In the sky over California today, it was the first leg of a race worth $10 million. A private, manned, and reusable rocket ship flew briefly into space. But once is not enough in this race. CBS's Vince Gonzalez reports they're halfway there after a high-anxiety scare.
High over the Mojave Desert, the privately owned Spaceship One separated from its launch plane and shot into the upper atmosphere. But the flight became a nail-biter when the spacecraft began to roll unexpectedly, corkscrewing its way into low orbit. Nervous ground controllers radioed pilot Michael Melville.
We indeed did recommend from the ground that Mike shut the motor off because we were uncomfortable with the high roll rates.
But Melville pushed the envelope, rocketing higher until he knew he'd hit the altitude needed to qualify for the first leg of the X Prize, a $10 million challenge to put a private, reusable spacecraft in orbit twice within 2 weeks. After descending at 3 times the speed of sound, faster than a rifle bullet, Spaceship One glided to a perfect touchdown. On the ground, Melville joked he rolled the craft on purpose. Regardless, he said, he was always in control.
When I got to the top, I got it set straight, and then I took my little camera and took a few pictures out of the windows.
They're calling the mission a complete success. They're still going to go analyze this to determine what exactly caused it, to make sure they don't need to do something before the next flight.
Spaceship One's designers say they'll be ready to launch again as early as Monday to meet the final requirement for the X Prize. Already in orbit, astronauts on the space station phoned in their congratulations.
We welcome them to space.
Perhaps happy they are no longer the only ones on the edge of the Earth. Vince Gonzalez, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Advertisers are always trying to sell you something. They could do a better job of it if they knew what you liked and disliked, if they could get inside your head. Now, as CBS's Bill Whitaker reports in tonight's Eye on America, they may have found a way.
If you think today's ads are made to manipulate,
it can
be fast.
Wait till you see what the future has in store. A new breed of brain researchers is showing advertisers a way into our minds, our deepest desires. At Caltech, they're using MRIs to peer into consumers' brains to see how they respond to everything from sunglasses to celebrities. It's called neuromarketing.
There's a lot more going on that we're not aware of.
Are you finding that there's a difference between what people say they like and what their brain says they like?
Oftentimes there is.
Researcher Annette Asp found that out. With her hip haircut and style, she thought for sure her brain would light up with delight at the cool stuff. But look.
And this is how my brain responds to the cool images.
Almost nothing. Instead, a strong negative reaction to uncool things.
So you're cool so that you won't be uncool.
Exactly.
Do you feel like it was reading your brain, reading your mind?
Well, it is reading my mind, definitely.
At least that's what advertisers are banking on. Today, figuring out what consumers want is hit or miss. Tapping into their unconscious, the promise of neuromarketing, is advertising's holy grail.
There's no data to show that this actually works.
Some critics call it Orwellian. Others, like Dr. Daniel Reich, say it's more fantasy than fact.
We can tell generally what parts of the brains is active when you're doing different things. But no, I can't tell you what you're thinking.
Still, brain imaging does reveal deep emotions when we make choices, like voting. At UCLA, they're studying voters' responses to President Bush, Senator Kerry, and political ads like this classic. Guess what? Republicans and Democrats are different. Democrats more agitated by the violent images.
Which suggests that Democrats dislike violence in general.
It can't be that Republicans like violence.
They're less disturbed by violence. It's not that they like it.
Do you understand how people might be worried about this technology?
Yeah, I guess the main point is that they feel they could be manipulated. But there is nothing wrong in, first of all, in trying to figure out whether this stuff works or not.
Neuromarketed goods could be on sale next year. In this brave new world, an old adage applies. Buyer beware. In Los Angeles, this is Bill Whitaker for Eye on America.
More stories are just a click away, but don't forget to join me on television for the on-air edition of the CBS Evening News. On Thursday, the so-called stealth tax. Millions get hit with it and want it changed. Where the presidential candidates stand. In the CBS series, What Does It Mean to You? For CBSNews.com, I'm Dan Rather.